Welcome to Energy Stew. This is Peter Roth, your host. And I'd like to ask you, have you been prepared to quarantine yourself? How many people have? And are you good at it or not? How many people are? Probably not many, but we have to do it. So to help us do it better, I thought it would be a good idea to understand what our individual human design charts can tell us about how we're designed to handle quarantine. And you can actually get your chart, and my guest and I will tell you how, so you can, if you don't have it already, you'll be able to look at it and understand some of what we're talking about, because we'll explain a lot of it so you can see it in your own chart. So we're really going to tell you so much of the way the chart explains our differences in how we can handle a quarantine or not. And to do this, I've asked a frequent guest on Energy Stew, who's a human design analyst, as I am, and has been for many, many years, as I have. And we've done many shows about this. So I want to welcome back Natalie Lilico. Natalie, welcome back to Energy Stew.
Thank you, Peter. It's a privilege to be here. And I'm excited to be able to provide some insights and help for people as we're going through this very unusual period in our lives, unprecedented.
Right. And so the chart actually has a lot of different descriptions about who we are, how we are, and how we're different from others. And we're going to go look at many of those during this show to help people see why they are like they are and how different that might be from others. So where should we start, Natalie?
Well, I think a lot of people know what their type is and they can resonate with that. So that's like a beginning entry point for, let's say, the manifestors, who are kind of designed to be the lone wolf, can probably handle from that perspective being limited to social interactions.
Interesting. It's not like they don't need any, but it's not easy for manifestors in the world because they have higher expectations of making life work in their own purposes or for their own purposes. And it's an old energy that isn't as acceptable nowadays because it's the old energy of the kings and queens who could say what they want and the kingdom would have to jump. Nowadays, the manifestors are troubled by the resistance they get for being that way.
Yeah, they're having to acquiesce to, okay, I'll do it myself. But that is the point of a manifestor if they, they are clear on what they need to do. So as far as gathering, extra supplies and things like that, they can certainly be in action about that.
Right. Okay, yeah, they are very individualistic people. So let's look at manifesting generators and generators, because there are only 5 types, and we can group the generators that includes manifesting generators. They are a bit different, but both of those are driven by needing to use their energy, needing to have their motors going all the time. So it might be difficult to be in quarantine when your motor can't be as driven as it likes to be.
Yeah, well, hopefully they have some projects that they've been wanting to do for a long time and they haven't had the time to do it.
Right. Generators always get busy, even on vacation.
Exactly. Yeah, so being a generator myself, I work well with a list. These are the things, and I can look at the list and say, oh yeah, I got energy for that to do that. I would venture to say that manifesting generators might have a little more difficulty in having to be, limited or isolated, unless they're very, self-directed with, because they love projects. They can be busy all day long if it's something that they're really into. And
Right, they're super busy people. So it's hard to, well, we can find ways to be super busy if we allow ourselves to find projects that, when we're quarantined, to do that. So then we get to projectors. And my wife is a projector, so I'm familiar with projectors. They're not run by their motors the same way as us generators. And they are more self-nurturers. So they can work within their own energies pretty well. And my wife always likes to meditate a couple times a day, does a lot of yoga, that kind of thing. So she's kind of happy that she can be in a realm now that she can nurture herself a lot more.
Really doesn't have to. Well, interesting. My partner is a projector as well, probably, and this is where we get to where the type is one thing, but when looking at somebody's design, there are some other variables. He's one with a very wide split. So he's got a lot of energy in his body and a lot of energy in his head, but the two don't meet. So it's like if he's got something to do, he's okay, but he's now taken totally out of his element to not go to work. So, it's taken him a while to reset, to not going and doing what he is to do every day.
Right, and so split definitions are important. You're a single definition, so you don't have that trouble. I'm a split definition, and so I'm always trying to bridge the gaps in my chart.
Exactly.
Right.
And let's not forget the reflectors, because I had a little insight about them. Like, well, I wonder how reflectors would handle this. I think in one way they would handle it well, because there's not so much, frenetic energy and going on. People, is slowed down a little bit.
Right, they reflect what's around them, so they can reflect quarantine.
Yeah, but I also think it might depend on the day, because reflectors are very changeable. Their chart changes daily, depending, so they have access to certain energies. So
yeah, they're sensitive to the position of the moon.
Yeah. So
Right.
I thought, they'd probably really depend on the day. I don't have that many reflectors in my life right now to be observing them, but we don't want to leave them out.
Well, there aren't that many of them. It's only 1.5% of the population.
Right. And so,
and by the way, so projectors are about 21% of the population. Manifestors are about 8.5% of the population, and generators are the rest, which is around 70%.
Yeah, thanks for adding that.
So
go ahead.
Yeah, let's talk. You want to talk about the centers, or let's actually talk about profile next.
Yeah, I think it's
that's
important
also
for people to understand just their perspective. So just a little background on a profile. It's, how we look at the world. It's the role that we play and the character that we play. And so, there's 12 different profiles, but there are only 6 numbers. And so they get mixed differently to create different profiles.
right.
But each one has a key word.
That's because this works on the hexagrams of the Chinese I Ching, and each hexagram is only 6 lines. So this whole system is based, many of parts of the system are based on 1 to 6.
Yeah, right. So I would say people that have a 1 in their profile, that would be a 1-3 or a 4-1 or a 1-4, but that they may have a tendency to, have a little bit more fear or, come up around the change that's
Right.
happening right now.
Right. If you're a 1, you're an investigator. I'm a 1.
Yeah. Well,
And
I think they're the ones that are going to research. It's like, what is this coronavirus and where did it come from?
right.
And
We
really,
want to know everything.
really get into the nitty gritty of
Right.
it.
Right. And there's so many people who aren't 1s and they're not as excited about the details.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So then the 2s, there's 2 4s and 6 2s and 5 2s. But the 2-4 is a very popular profile. A lot of people have that profile. And on one hand, they like to be the hermit. They like to, have their own time and their own,
Right.
space to flow around in. But their predicament is they want to connect with people.
But only when it's worthwhile. So that they're happy being by themselves if they can't create quality beyond that. So hermits are willing to be at home, taking care of themselves, enjoying themselves, if the opportunities aren't there for more.
Exactly. They're very, putzing around or, messing around with this or messing around with that. They're quite content with that. So they probably are able to handle this limitation right now better than some of the others.
Right. Yeah, they're fortunate. So what about the 3?
Yeah, we got 3 5s and 6 3s and 3 6s, but
Well, by the way, because profiles are always 2 numbers of the 6, so that's why you're giving
yes.
pairs.
Yeah, we're talking mostly up the ladder of the third line, which belongs to several different profiles. I think they're going to have need a little time to adjust to it. I think that they can, they like to test things out, and they're more outgoing than the hermit is. So I think they're going to they might have a little bit of a difficulty adjusting to it.
Yeah, 3s learn from life experience, so they want those experiences. And so they are willing to bounce around, but they're not as nervous about the details until they bump into them. So they don't investigate the same way us 1s do.
Right. Well, there's more of a experiential kind of investigation.
Right.
Versus let me look that up and I'll get back to you.
Right. So that's the 3s. The 4s, I'm a 4, I'm a 4-1. So us 4s, we suffer more from quarantine.
Yeah.
Because the 4 is the number of the opportunist. I'm always seeking opportunity with others to give or to receive, but I'm always excited about meeting new people and interacting and see what I can learn or see what I can teach. And it's always so exciting for me to find new opportunity with others. So 4s have to hold the fort more than usual. Yet we can do a lot from home. I mean, we certainly can be on the phone a lot, on the internet a lot, and interact. But
well, I would say to those 4, the 4-1s, the 4-6s, that it's a great time to reach out to your family and friends or people that you don't maybe have as much time to talk to when, you're doing your normal work day, because that is really going to make them feel better and just really stay connected to their friends.
Yeah, the 4s are always looking for those connections.
Yeah, people that they already have a connection with. Because without, being out or going to the regular social groups or business groups or whatever, it's going to be harder on them. So it's a good time to, get in touch with family and friends.
Right. Although, as you said, there's a combination of 4 and 6. We'll get to it, the 6s, but it might also be who they want to have opportunities with people who haven't harmed them in their lives, or aren't like people who have harmed them in their lives. Because 6s have suffered
Yes.
from others in childhood. But let's stop at the 5 before we get to the 6, even though we just talked about the 6. So the 5, how would you like to describe the 5?
Well, the 5s are pretty practical people. So I would think that, and they also like to, take care of things. And so I think they might be concerned about their neighbors, or, just really practical everyday things in their immediate world and the people around them.
Right, and they're very smart people, because they're the ones people project on them that they have answers, and they're used to that. I have, the rest of my family are all 5s, and people seek them out. You'd think they would seek me out even more so because of the kind of work I do, but they naturally are attracted to a 5. I'm not a 5.
They're very practical people, and they're very capable people, and they like helping others. They like being able to utilize that, their gifts.
Yes, that's great.
You can't keep them back.
Although they can feel pressure from having too many people seeking their
if they're not quite prepared for it, or if it's something very new to them, then they don't feel so giving. But once they feel confident in what they have to offer, they will do it for you.
Good. And then the 6s we briefly talked about are people who they become wise ones in life as they have suffered, and the healing path from their suffering makes them very wise.
Yeah, and so we have the 6-2, we have 3 6s, we have 6 3s. I happen to be a 6-2. One of the benefits of a 6 is we have the big perspective. We have the overview. So like how is this gonna take us forward? What is happening right now? If we get too far in the weeds with it, we don't see the benefits. How is this going to help our evolution?
Right. So 6s are careful because they have questions about it, because in their childhood they faced a lot of limitation, and so they've learned how to deal with limitation, and so that's why they'd be good in quarantine, because they'll know how to be careful.
Very good.
Yeah, good. All right, so that's the profile of the combination of the 6 numbers. And so let's talk about the centers. These are the chakras, and we only have about 10 minutes left, so we'll go fairly quickly. So let's look at the main chakras that might be the biggest concern. The throat chakra, for instance, if it's very defined, like mine is, we're people who need to talk a lot. My throat chakra is a motor, so I'm a verbal gunslinger, which is why I can have a radio show.
Exactly.
But there are people with undefined chakras, throat chakras.
Yeah.
And those people really struggle because there's an underlying fear of not being recognized for some reason. And they're much more social, they're out there needing to interact with others. So it's the interaction which actually lubricates their throats and gives them definition. So they need that. They need that social connection that they might not have in the world if they're home too much. And so it's trouble for undefined throats to be quarantined.
Yeah. So and I'm an undefined throat, so I'm usually the quieter one of the two of us. Anyway, so let's talk about the one right below that, the identity center, or the G center, it's also called. And this is about, where are we going and who we are, what's our direction. And I think that people with an undefined center here, the identity center, I think they would have more difficulty with this quarantine.
By the way, when people get their charts, when we tell them how to get them from us, or if they already have them, undefined means that those centers in their charts look white. They're white, and the defined ones are colored in. Right. And it doesn't matter what the color is, it's just if they're colored in or not. So this middle one, it's a diamond shape, is the identity, and it has a lot to do with love. So it has to do with the ability to love oneself and to know oneself. And so when it's undefined, we don't have that within ourselves. If someone says to me, Peter, go within and see who you are, I look inside and go, I don't know, I can be anybody. So we need to reflect off of others to know ourselves. So we need that conditioning, just like the throat chakra needs social conditioning to be able to activate itself. Our identity needs social conditioning to identify who we are. And we're somewhat chameleons. I mean, there's a positive side to it, is that we can, almost be anybody. But the negative side is that means we don't really know who we are. So it's awkward. And so we need that social interaction. And that's why quarantining can be tough for an undefined identity.
Yeah, and it'd also be tough for them because if they're used to going out in the world and having a certain job and a certain thing that they do and a certain identity that they had, and now all of a sudden that's all changed.
Yes, yeah, because the job is what they reflect off of to give them identity.
Yeah.
So it's a very important center for the understanding of the nature of quarantine. So let's come down to the little triangle below it, which is in human design is called the heart center. I really don't see that because I really believe that our identity and our love being in the G center in the middle is, to me, more of a heart sense, because this little triangle is really more about willpower and ego. And when it's undefined, our ego can be all over the place. It doesn't define itself. So we can really be lost in an unhappy ego and a weak ego that doesn't have the energy that it would like, because we're not bouncing off the egos of others. Or it could get very large because, again, it's not bouncing off of others, so it can overexpand itself. So in a sense, that also can be troubled by quarantine. Since we only have a few minutes left, let's come down to the lower left, the spleen chakra, which is a home of fear for survival. And when it's undefined, our fears can run all over the place. So most people who have undefined spleens can become very fearful during this time. And there are traits in that. There are different gates that people can have that can either make them smarter about their fears or can make them more fearful about them. So it is a very important center that has to do with our comfort in quarantine, or the reason we're quarantined actually is probably the biggest part of this center is the fear of what can happen.
Well, I think also for people that do not have it colored in or defined is to be aware of if they're feeling off, or they're feeling the fear, or they're feeling the anxiety, to really like have some consciousness about it, to see, is that actually coming from within, that it's their fear, or are they reflecting what they're getting from their partner or their kids, or, you know,
Right, right. You have to be smart around it, about it, because it can run loose on you.
Yeah, so like giving it a voice, that I'm feeling fearful versus, you know, really reacting. So just a little encouragement for them to realize that that's going to be a natural situation that they're going to run into during this time.
Right. So there's a lot more we can say about this. We could do certainly an hour and a half show about this. But these are, I think, the key elements. There are a number of others that I think play a big role, but it's a short show. So Natalie Lilico, give contact information, please.
Yes, people can reach me at 707-888-3569, or they're welcome to email me with their birth information to get their chart, and that is Natalie, Nattalee, at Align With Your Design, ALIGN, alignwithyourdesign.com.
Great, great. And likewise for me, they can get a free chart. I'm at Peter at Heart River, HEART river.org. And I'm so glad, Natalie, to have had this chance to help people learn about something about themselves, if they can get their charts and really seek this information about themselves to understand why, why they're different from others, or why people complain about their behavior or their feelings, when it's really their charts, their designs, that explain why they have these particular needs.
Well, I think it also helps us have compassion, that we just aren't all the same, and we
Right.
we each have our own individual cookie cutter.
Right. And so thank you, Natalie. I'm glad you could be on the show today.
Thank you, Peter.
And this is Peter Roth, your host of Energy Stew. And I'd love to hear from you. And thank you for listening.